Hey, JulesBlessedVegan, and as always, welcome to my channel. And for those of you who are new, I know you can benefit. So people, we are talking about that inner critic, right? That little voice. Sometimes I say it's coconut, which is my tiny little monkey. Sometimes I say it's the whole tribe. But to be fair, we all have an inner critic, which is a voice that we've carried with us that in no way serves us. So I've been in this workshop on Facebook, and it's been fabulous. And if you go up into my search and you put inner critic, about 4 different videos that come up from before. But what I've learned too often is that if I don't practice something consistently, inevitably it sneaks back in if it's not serving me, and I lose it if indeed it was serving me. So of course we know consistency is key, but I think this is a really good one. It's from Psychology Today, and it's just three ways to outsmart that inner critic. And I kind of like it when it's just 3 instead of 3,000, a whole list. Let's just go for 3. And some of these are exactly what I've been practicing this week. So it says 3 ways to outsmart your inner critic. You can't please your inner critic, but you can outsmart it. This is a really good one. It says, if you're like most people, you have a little voice that's constantly evaluating how you look, what you're doing, and what kind of person you are. It says things like, that was a stupid thing to do, or you're fat, why did you eat that? Sound familiar? Oh, so tragic. Psychologists call that voice the inner critic, and it's harsh, mean, and relentless. And I so agree. You know, it's really sad. In the last, 6 weeks, 2 months, for various reasons, I have been dealing with this inner critic. And I think part of the reason is because a lot of things changed rather rapidly. School started back. I had to start driving 2.5 hours a day again. My husband had to get surgery. My dog broke its foot. There were all these things. My horse just got injured. There's always stuff in our inbox, as Tanny Raw often says, and you can look up Tanny Raw on any social media platform for health. She's amazing. But there's always something in our inbox. I get that. But what I'm realizing is that when I feel that things are out of control, that I can't control, or that I am in fear of not succeeding, my inner critic steps in. And, you know, as a God person, I often attribute some of this to the devil and his minions, because he loves the vulnerability, right? I mean, if we're just completely trusting in God, there's a peace there. But when we take our power back as a human and we try and manage it ourselves and fear steps in, I think the devil loves that, because he's like, cool, here we go, quick, get in there, while that person's feeling vulnerable. That's certainly true for me. And so I had different fears, and things were coming at me so quick, and there were so many things. Oh my goodness, I will not even go into it. But unfortunately, my inner critic just started pounding on me, going for broke. And I was thinking about when I was little. You know, I certainly had critical people. I came from a hypercritical setting with the premise that if they're hard on us, we'll rise above. But some of us didn't rise above. Some of us just felt broken. I think it comes down to personality type. And so unfortunately for me, I absolutely adopted that inner critic. And when people are long gone, all lights are turned off, the day is over, the phone is down, the computer is off, the words spoken are long gone, and that person's not even contemplating them anymore. I, in my brilliance and ability to memorize everything, have stored that ready to just start firing off on me on a moment's notice when I'm in that mindset. And I'm so sorry for that, but that's why I appreciate this. So psychologists call that voice the inner critic, and it's harsh, mean, and relentless. I couldn't agree more. You probably react as if your critic says it's true. You think, I am disgusting. I do need to lose weight. I'll start my diet tomorrow. You think about what went wrong with you and why you don't measure up to the people around you. Most likely, you've tried a number of strategies to try to get the critic to stop. You've argued with the voice, used positive affirmations, or strived to be smarter, thinner, or better in some way, but nothing seemed to work. Guilty as charged on all accounts, yes. This is the interesting part. Let's hear this. Are you ready? Bring it in. The problem with strategies like these is that they only reinforce the voice inside us. Let's say that again. The problem with strategies like these is that they only reinforce the voice within us. Sometimes we can please the inner critic. but not for long. Pretty soon, it'll be back to its old tricks. To make real change, we need to stop giving the critic so much power over us. And here are 3 ways that we can do that. Number 1, name your critic. I once had a client who was young, smart, and very likable, but she could never relax because she never felt good enough. She was terrified of making mistakes, so she avoided people and things that made her most happy. She didn't want to risk other people discovering how inadequate she was. That's an interesting statement. How inadequate she was, when in fact is probably how inadequate she felt. Because I imagine that this girl was very capable. And I'm speaking to myself too. So many people, my younger sister, my husband, so many people are so good to me. And they always affirm how capable I am. They always, like, everything in life, from grades to scores to interviews, have all suggested that I'm above average. And my inner critic always says how inadequate, how inept, how unworthy I am. So I totally get this. I asked her to tell me what the critic looked like. She replied that it looked like an ugly wolf and added that it would even eat if it wasn't hungry. She explained that it would criticize her even if she didn't deserve it. Over the course of the next few weeks, as she began to note when the wolf was present, she found that it would naturally quiet down. So the insecure inner critic who can't shut up suddenly quiets when it's noticed, which is very interesting. In a way, I can relate to that in the sense that if I am busy doing productive, appropriate, lovely things, I'm not spending time with that critic. The minute I feel insecure, the minute I feel fearful, the critic goes for broke. So I can totally understand what they're saying right there. She explained that it would criticize her even if she didn't deserve it. Over the course of the next few weeks, as she began to note the wolf was present, she found that it would naturally quiet down, right? Doesn't deserve it, of course. It's a different move. This is really important. It's a different move than we usually make because we are turning to face the critic, rather than trying to get away from it. You can try this exercise yourself. Close your eyes and get in touch with that voice. See if you can sense what your critic looks like and give it a name that fits. As you go through your day, when you hear that voice, just notice silently to yourself that the critic is present. You can have more than one inner critic, depending on a circumstance. So for me, even when I'm doing a Jules Blessed Vegan video, often my critic steps in and immediately starts saying, and this critic comes from actual critics, right? Like I said, it kind of came from a hypercritical environment. I have people who are far too comfortable in my life to say, Jules, put on foundation. Oh my gosh, your skin's a mess. Jules, put on mascara. We can hardly see your beady eyes. Jules, like, they will happily say that to me. Now, they've only said it with the understanding that they're trying to help me. What they don't know is that it's totally been put into my inner critic's bank of going for broke on how ugly and, I just can't, I don't even have the words. I have to fight so hard to allow myself to come on here. And you may say, just put on some dang makeup then. What is your problem? It's not about that. It's not about that. Call me a rebel, but I am not going in that direction to appease the critics. I'm not. If I choose makeup at times, yay me. But I'm not going to appease my critics. And I'm not going with this inner critic whom I named Mommy Dearest. And the reason I did that was because it's the worst kind of mother. The one who tells you to put your shoulders back, to hold in your stomach, to, stop frowning, like on that constant Mommy Dearest, who all under the idea of helping and loving you and helping you, sparing you of their experience. Please. That's what I went with. This bickering Mommy Dearest with like a 1950s, what are those aprons with the little stuff and high heels in the kitchen and all perfect. When on the back porch, she's smoking a cigarette and drinking, gin. I don't even know. So yeah, that's kind of where I went with that, my Mommy Dearest. So it says that you need to close your eyes and get in touch with that voice and see if you could sense what your inner critic is like and give it a name that fits. As you go through your day, acknowledge that critic silently. Naming your critic allows you to see it for what it is. When you name your critic, it loses some of its power because you're acknowledging that you are not the problem. You don't need to be fixed. The real problem is that you believe everything the critic is telling you. I know, in that insecure moment, all that verbal abuse, I'm like all in. It's so sad. Okay, but this is super important because this is science-based. Ready? Research on naming emotion shows that when you name what you are feeling, there is decreased activity in parts of the brain in charge of emotion. They can literally monitor this, like on an MRI. Research on naming emotion shows that when you name what you are feeling, there is decreased activity in the part of the brain in charge of emotion. Labeling your experience helps you to steady your mind. When you label what's happening, you feel calmer and more in charge. Yay, God. Number 2, understand your critic. Many clients tell me that their critic is there to help. If I stop listening, they say, I won't achieve anything. I'll get fat. I'll get lazy. See, that's where I came from, that hypercritical environment that said, if we put you down, you'll rise above. We didn't all rise above, okay? Listening to the critic assumes that its voice is a voice of reason. Listen to this. But reason is fair and balanced, not cruel. Reason is fair and balanced, not cruel. So that should be like a flag. The minute you start hearing the verbal abuse, you have to remember that is not a voice of reason. That's cruel, and therefore your critic has probably showed up, for which I'm going to start saying, talk to the hand, mommy dearest, or don't. The psychologist and meditation teacher Tara Brach describes the critic as an expression of fear. This is so interesting. Fear engages the fight or flight response in our nervous system. When there is a threat to your safety, like an intruder in your home, adrenaline starts pumping, blood pressure increases, and cortisol is released so that your body is prepared to either fight the intruder or get out quickly. But fight or flight also happens when we perceive that we are threatened, even if there is no real threat. See, it's the difference between being in my adult and my inner child. I get the whole inner critic thing, but honestly, when I become very small, like in my work setting, if I feel like I'm, might be being called to the carpet for something I did or whatever, I become very small. And that little kid is waiting for that critic to start, pounding on me. So I so get that. The critic convinces us that we are the problem, and that feels threatening, straight up. According to Dr. Brock, the critic launches us into fight mode, only rather than fighting off an intruder, we fight ourselves all day long. It's not all the time, but when it comes, it's much like it's not even a food craving, it's the obsession for food. No matter what I'm doing, I might be teaching, I might be smiling, I might be everything, but an entire part of my brain is going for broke. Oh my gosh, I cannot stop the pounding of messages. It's terrible. It's so sad. That's why I really appreciate this. What a waste of energy. Let's listen to this. What a waste of energy and of life to fight yourself. It doesn't make much sense, but neither does a lot of what our brains do. But so true. My gosh, I have to advocate for myself if no one else. We need to be able to evaluate ourselves and our lives honestly, but the critic doesn't do that for us. Seeing the critic as an expression of fear rather than a voice of reason allows us to choose and develop more helpful mental modes like constructive criticism and self-compassion. I love that idea. If we can't advocate for ourselves, who will? Okay, so be bigger than your critic. The critic is a big problem in our culture. When we believe we're never good enough, it's impossible to relax. We walk around stressed, and that stress is felt by people around us. Guilty as charged. Oh my. My zeal and happiness for life is contagious. My depression and dark mood is equally so. And I'm so sorry for that. I just have energy that emits from me, good or bad. All right. So we walk around stressed, and that stress is felt by the people around us. The critic affects how we make decisions and limits the sense of possibilities in our life. So agree. Can't even count the number of things I never leaped forward with in faith because of that critic. But the only way the critic can truly thrive is if we keep believing what it says. It thrives when we make our looks, our performance at school or work, our popularity, or as our priority in life. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't care what other people think and that we shouldn't have goals. But making how good we are at that thing matter most is a signal to the critic that it's time to get to work. That's what I meant by the whole devil thing. Like the minute I start focusing on my insecurity, focusing on my inability, focusing on what isn't right, the devil just starts giggling and loving it. And this is saying when you get out of yourself, when you focus on what actually matters instead of the nonsense, there's no wiggle room for him. Like I was thinking, when I first wanted to change my diet, it was because I was diagnosed with kidney disease. And they literally were offering me, a pink with flowered portable dialysis machine. They were asking if I wanted the stent in my chest or my arm. I freaked out and was like, you have got the wrong person. This is a no. This is a hard no. And for the next year, I just focused on not the scale, not the different foods, just staying alive, just choosing to get rid of overt sugar, like literally packaged nonsense. I abstained for a year. I tried to walk a little more, park a little farther away. I wasn't in a group. I wasn't weighing myself. I wasn't hearing from other people. I literally just dropped 100 pounds in a year out of a desire to live. There wasn't a critic. There wasn't anything. There was only a goal to live, and everything fell into place. So I totally understand what this means. And it says, making how good we are at the thing that matters most is a signal the critic is ready to get to work. Focusing too heavily on how we stack up is what gives the critic a job. I so get that. It's a really super competitive environment, seemingly. If you're not a competitive person, you probably don't even notice. But I come from competition, and I see that I accidentally try to compare myself to others when we all have our own walk. We all have our own history. People have not ever weighed what I weighed at 330 plus. People have never recovered from all that I've recovered from my asthma to my kidneys to my thyroid to my familial tremor to like all those things, right? So my truth is not their truth. And yet I accidentally fall in to the competitive nature. I accidentally start seeing what they are seemingly all doing right and I'm doing all wrong. And the rug is pulled out for me and I lose my program like again and again and again. So I so get that. When we have a goal for ourselves and our lives that is bigger than being good, we become bigger than the critic. My client did this by consciously choosing a new focus for her life that was deeply meaningful. For her, this was having a more peaceful mind. When she looked closely, she could see that the wolf destroyed her sense of peace. It made her feel constricted, scared, and angry. When her critic started talking, she would name it and then remember that it was her goal not to be perfect, but to develop a more peaceful and calm way of being. Her shift in priorities helped her outsmart her critic and live a much fuller life. Oh my gosh, is that brilliant? That's exactly what I need. That's exactly what I need to get back to just the joy of what I was seeking and not the competition of what I feel like I'm failing, and that is definitely the critic. And I notice when it happens, something starts out as exciting and fun, and then all of a sudden I feel imprisoned by it. And it's like, wait a minute, I thought you loved that. How come you're feeling like you're trapped in it? And that's because I accidentally, delved into the details. I accidentally started to judge myself, compete with others, decide that I wasn't good enough, that I'd never be enough, like the whole thing. Instead of the happy playground that presented itself initially. And that's true with so many things in my life. So I'm happy to see how to outsmart the inner critic. Of course, I'll include this in the description of the video. Let's go back really quickly. Number 1, name that critic. Try and visualize what it looks like. Number 2, understand the critic, that in no way does mean, cruel criticism serve you, and no way will it lift you higher towards your purpose. And number 3, be bigger than that critic by going for something authentic instead of comparing yourself. I love it, and as always, I'm speaking to myself, but I'm hoping that somebody else can relate, seriously. All right, my friends, that's where I am, just trying to get back to authentic and letting go of some of the nonsense. Okay, like if you like, join us if you haven't, subscribe. Let me know in the comments below how I may support you. And until we talk again, best of all, know that you're blessed.